welcome back. And we are live. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You guys can see me okay?
You sound a little distant, but we can hear you.
Let's see if I can get a little bit closer. Better?
Yes.
All right. How you ladies feeling? We're back for another week, and that's what she said. Everybody had a decent week?
Yes.
So far, so good. So far, so good. Happy to be here.
I'm in Dallas right now, and it is storming like crazy. So it is that type of weather. If I'm being honest, I really want to be cuddled up in my bed right now. Like, it's so dark outside. It's crazy. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. No, same. I think it's gotten hot in Ohio finally, and my allergies have been on 10. I have not been able to. I will be impressed if I can get through this episode without sneezing a single time. But I'm happy we're here because I need some recharging of my batteries. I have been working insanely. I've been on back-to-back meetings since 9 o'clock this morning with 0 breaks. I barely had enough time to squeeze in anything to eat. So I am here, and I'm excited to get poured into today, because this is what I need. I've taken the full bull by the horns in my life, and I'm trying to make some things happen. And I'm gonna need y'all to carry me a little bit today. So welcome back. This is week 11 of That's What She Said, and I'm excited to get into this today. Patty, you brought up some really good points for us pre-show, so why don't you kick us off today?
Yeah, definitely. We got you. Sit back, relax. We want to hear some of your opinions. You don't have to lead this one today, Kalani. We got you. So welcome to the show. I wanted everybody to just I wanted to reiterate our goal and purpose for this show. We have come together as a group of women that have been through a lot in life and in business. It is our goal that we share what we wish we knew when we were starting out as entrepreneurs on our path. And, I feel like the word entrepreneur sometimes can be a little bit intimidating, because for me, that was selling furniture. I was working at a flea market selling couches in Spanish, and I didn't speak Spanish. So it could be that it's like it could be a sales job, and it could be a side gig. It doesn't matter. Whatever effort that you're putting into generating multiple streams of income is noble. It's important. It's absolutely necessary with the state of the world and the economy and money. And we want to talk about the things that we wish we knew. And everybody's at a different journey. So there are things right now that we could get from somebody who's 20 years our senior, who might say, hey, this is what I wish I knew when I was at your juncture, right? We're always consistently learning. We're not preaching from a pedestal saying, hey, we've got it figured out. What we're doing is having an open dialogue, talking about things that we wish we knew, and pivoting as we go through the process. So today we're going to talk about the importance of this debt crisis. I'm going to share a couple important points with you guys, and we're going to get right into it and go a little bit deeper on this topic today. So your feedback is always welcome. You can make comments in the chat. We're going to pay attention to them. I'm not always great at staying focused at speaking and looking at the chat at the same time, but I will do my best to get on that. So being a high earner without the fundamental knowledge of money management can be a curse, right? Because we get this notion that, hey, because I'm balling, I'm making money, I could sell water to a well, I got this and that, I'm good at this, that we kind of lose sight on what the basic fundamental importance is of money management. So it can be a curse to be a high earner without a basic fundamental understanding of what money is, and how to manage that money. Not only do we face the psychological challenges such as survivor's guilt, let's talk about that. One of my very favorite songs from Jay-Z, which I can name a lot, okay, is Nickels and Dimes, okay? So Nickels and Dimes is one of my songs, because if you're listening to Nickels and Dimes, it's all about survivor's guilt, right? It's like the purest form of giving is anonymous to anonymous, right? That's one of the most powerful lines. And of course, he's talking about, am I guilty for giving? Am I guilty for receiving? What do I do with this position that I'm in? Because everybody around me might be dying or didn't make it. I can't carry everybody with me. And what do I do now that I can and everybody around me can't? And there is a bit of survivor's guilt that comes from with people that are coming through this process of self-knowledge and earning income, especially if we're coming from nothing, as many of us have. So that's a really important thing we want to talk about. And of course, there's the other aspect of it psychologically when, you've never had anything. The very first thing you want to do is go get the shit you never had, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's when we were kids, guys talking about, I got to go get the Jordans. I got to get the shoes my mom said I couldn't have. Now you got a wall full of shoes you're never going to wear, right?
Yeah.
Or we got, clothes, jewelry, Birkin bags, whatever it is that we are dying to get that check for so that we can go pick up. That we also need to explore the psychological relationship between the idea of being a high earner and saying, hey, I want to get out here and I want to figure out how I can show people that I'm making this money, right? And then now we also have showing off fancy purchases, but we have difficulties understanding what it means to come out of the survivor's mindset into the mindset of a builder. And the basic difference is going to be management skills and emotional intelligence. Now, if I wasn't an absolutely poor manager at some point, I would not be qualified to have this conversation, right? It's not that there is a level, again, not speaking from perfection, but from experience. I had to be bad at it in order to get good at it. And the problem that I faced personally is that I've been making money since I was 14 years old. And I had the idea of independence from such an early age that I didn't have to listen to anybody. So your rules didn't matter to me. And there are things that I could say that if I did differently, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be streaming from, Italy. So there's a lot to learn here, things that we wish that we knew and that we had when we first started on these journeys. Okay.
So real quick, Patty, before you keep going, because I know you have a couple of other points, can we kind of go back to, because the one that you hit about the survivor's guilt, and can we touch on that for a second? Because when I tell you, every one of these, this is such a triggering conversation for me. That really hit home to me. I think when I first got into radio, that was the thing for me, is that I was so happy that I was successful, but there was a part of me that felt bad because everybody wasn't having the same experiences as me. And I'm trying to figure out, is that something that, do people project that on us, or is that something that we feel, and I love the fact that you went into, which makes so much sense, going into making these purchases, because yes, there's a part of us that we never had these things, and we definitely want to show ourselves that we made it. We come up with these philosophies that I deserve this. I've been working really hard. And as I'm looking across the room at a wall full of shoes that I cannot wear. I really want to kind of touch on a few of them before you keep moving on. Because girl, this right here, these are the topics that people don't ever talk about, for real.
Yeah,
right.
That survivor's guilt is an absolute beast. I think that the reason for that is that, okay, so someone just told me the other day they didn't want to post any pictures of food because there's people in Palestine right now that are completely starving, right? And I thought, okay, that makes sense. That's a form of survivor's guilt. So we could take a basic fundamental thought such as that. I'm eating and someone else can't eat. And that's exactly what it is, right? So the survivor's guilt starts with that. And I think it's this idea that I've come into something and now I don't know how to give it to everybody, or it's also that I owe them something, right? Because people just go, come on, blood, you don't want to change. You don't want to this, that. You got to, come on, you got to take care of your folks. You got to be this, you got to be that. Can I borrow $5? I need this, I need that. Whatever, wherever triggers it and sparks it, there's an idea that because you now have something that others don't, you are obligated to share it, or you don't know what to do with it because you've never seen it or had it before. And there's some psychological issues that do come with that we need to explore by first identifying, right? So what you just said was, hey, this is a triggering conversation for me, because when I started in a platform that gave me popularity, that gave me visibility, that gave me greater income, there was a certain degree of jealousy that came with that. And I needed to hold that person and say, hey, listen, I'm not better than you. Why do I feel the need to remind someone else that I'm not better than them? Why are we compensating for the emotions that other people experience in the presence of our success?
And it almost makes you where you can't even enjoy the fact that God is blessing you, because you are you're not sure if people are going to celebrate you. And then if you're celebrating because you're excited, you don't want other people to think you're throwing it in their face. So it's this constant battle all the time of I want to do better. I have been working hard because I do want different things and different experiences. But as soon as I kind of get them, it's you look around and you realize how many people may not be where you are at that time. Not that they won't get there. So then you feel now I have to digress and kind of cover my face. It's
Mhm.
weird.
Yeah.
It's
It is.
weird. I grew up in this culture. So my mom's side of the family, this is really interesting because, when you think about what could influence you to maybe have these feelings, right? It's what you're influenced by and what you see growing up. So my mom is Samoan. She's from Hawaii. My grandmother is native Samoan from the island of Samoa, right? Where all of the football players are found. And that's a very harsh culture. Like it's so, so harsh. I was born in the mainland. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. I did not grow up around that culture. So when my mother moved back west when I was young, I was experiencing that culture for the first time. And it was so interesting to see how it is a culture where, when you're young, right, it's a big respect culture. You can't have an opinion, you can't have your own thoughts. You do what you're told to do. And then you grow up and you get out and you make money and you bring it to the household. It is not a culture where they're pushing you out into the world to accomplish greater things. And so when you start to accomplish things, right, they take all the credit because they raised you that way, right? And then when you do things that you reach greater heights, which parents, it's so interesting to me how parents are always like, I want you to have better than I did. And my parents, absolutely 100%. This is not exclusive to my parents, because my parents had to break the cycle in their respective cultures, right? They really are pushing me and propelling me forward. But the rest of the culture didn't understand that. And so I think it's interesting interacting with other folks in the culture where it's like, wait, you do what? You did what? You have a business now, you have employees, you work for yourself, or you're online, or, oh, wow, you think you're really, doing something. And those folks never understand because they could never get out of that cyclical nature of the culture. And so what I find interesting with survivor's guilt, I guess you could say, which I have experienced in a different way, is my inability to say no.
Yeah.
Right. So when family members ask me for something, or if someone needs money, or I'm looked at as some sort of support system, it went from me fighting so hard to get out of the regular norm of the culture and being judged for that. And now I'm out here in the world and I'm doing well. And now they want to ask me for stuff. And then when I say no, I'm judged for that too. So it's like, it truly feels like a lose-lose situation sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you guys experience that at all?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think when people see that you've reached a certain level of success, there's some envy there. There is definitely some resentment, and especially if you are bold enough to talk about it or share about it or be public about it. People are like, well, why would you do that? Like, why would you want to share this? Why, and I think that it's because people don't appreciate the journey. People only see, where you are at that current moment and can take a snapshot, but people don't really understand all of the things that you've had to go through to get there. And then sometimes we forget, and I think that plays into that guilt. Like, we forget that we were up nights, days, struggling, fighting for these things that we now have. And on the other side, we can say we've accomplished these things. But I think that, people don't see that side. People don't understand the discomfort. People don't understand the sacrifices that you've had to make. And so, yeah, there's a lot of resentment, but for us, the guilt comes in too, because sometimes, it seems too good to be true to be where we are, not even like really acknowledging the fact that we gave up a lot to get where we are. So,
Yeah.
And what did Jay-Z say, Patty? I don't work this hard to say the same. He said that too, right?
yeah.
I don't know if that's what I got to remember that. I don't know. I'm thinking that was Kanye, but I'm not sure. Okay, so getting back to the fundamental of the conversation. So the survivor's guilt that I think we should be more focused on, in my opinion, I've heard what everybody had to say. We're talking about what happens with our interactions with others as a result of our success, how we internalize that, and how we respond to it. The survivor's guilt is something that you feel, right? So you've ever heard that saying that says, hey, what the saying goes something like, if someone, what someone thinks of you is not your problem, right? So we say that, right? But do you mean it? Because what the people that are the closest to you actually have the most triggering impact on you based on their responses to whatever it is that you're dealing with in life. So
Yes.
remember that the survivor's guilt is something that you're dealing with internally as a response mechanism to what's happening around you, right?
Yes.
So you have to sit with that and examine yourself. In every aspect, we start with examine yourself. Just like the girls love to quote Bible, so I'll say, study to show thyself approved, because a workman need not be ashamed. You have to start with yourself. So that means that the survivor's guilt can be solved, resolved, healed, expanded, or contracted with the conversations you're having with yourself, what you're sharing with others, and also how you're interpreting the responsibility given to you. So sometimes when people say with great responsibility or with great blessings come great responsibilities, remember that doesn't mean that you have been designated the key provider for the entire existence of your family or inner circle. So although there are many ways that you can choose to give back, there can be things. Remember, the greatest form of charity is from anonymous to anonymous. The greatest form of giving is from anonymous to anonymous. And when I always say, when you are going to give an account for your life, there's no one else that's going to be there giving an account for you. You're giving that for yourself. And it's between you and God, or whatever it is that you believe in, right? So you have to start with saying, do I owe my success to someone else? And I'll bring your attention to another lyric that is famous, which is, you wasn't shooting with me in the gym, okay? In the gym. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's do that. So going on to a couple facts that I think are important. Okay. Right now, I want to preface this by saying 65% of Americans that were surveyed by The Guardian are saying that they believe that we are in a recession, and they believe that it's the president's fault. Now, they are also saying that they believe that the unemployment rate is at the highest it's been in over 50 years, right? Those are false statements. So the belief system of the average American contradicts the facts and the data that are present today for our GDP, unemployment, and economic growth in the country. Where is that disconnect coming from? According to the Fed, 1 in 6 Americans in the poorest zip codes are delinquent on their credit cards. The share of people in delinquency in these areas has increased from 11% to 17%, the highest it's been in 21 years. In just 10 years, the percentage of debt has doubled. So in 21 years, we haven't seen this much delinquency and credit card debt in the percentage of in the people that live in the zip codes with the lowest amount of income. Okay. For 90% of Americans, delinquency rates on credit cards are now above the worst level since the great financial crisis in 2008. This is a serious issue. Delinquency on credit cards leads to lots of other issues for folks down the line. High rates on credit cards and slow wage growth have a lot to do with this. And this is exactly why consumers feel that we are in a recession. So if you're having conversations, we've touched on this before on the show, if you're having general conversations with folks, then you do understand that the general consensus is not that, oh yeah, I'm balling out of control, I'm making a lot of money, I'm doing what I got to do. The general consensus is that we're struggling. People are struggling to make ends meet. They're complaining about the price of gas and food. So there is a basic fundamental problems. And so when you are leveraging credit card debt to survive, you're facing a problem, especially in areas where you have the least amount of income for the population, and also no savings. So debt is a powerful tool that can be used to make more money. But if we're relying on it to survive, we're living beyond our means, and we have to explore that. So as a more formal introduction, Nassima McElroy, the founder of Financially Intentional, has paid off almost $1 million in debt while working as a nurse and raising children. So how did she do it? There's a lot of us that have an excuse. I can tell you one thing, that there's a lot of things I would probably do differently if I had a spouse. Investment strategies, the way that I spend money, how I do things. I would do a lot of things differently if I didn't have children, if I hadn't gone through a divorce. I would do a lot of things differently if I had a standard wage earning job that was coming in that was consistent. But I've never experienced that in my entire life. So Nassima not only has limited time due to having a career as a nurse, as a registered nurse, and probably one of the most successful in her field. On top of that, she has children. And on top of that, if it's okay for me to say, you don't have a spouse. So how did you take on $1 million? I want to start with that. So in your mind, you can eliminate every potential excuse that you had, every thought that came into your head that said, I can't do it because I don't have this and I don't have that and I got this and I got that. I want you to shut that noise down immediately and listen to what Nasima has to say, because without excuse, she tackled $1 million worth of debt while working as a nurse and raising children. Nasima, 90% of households in America, for 90% of households in America, your experience can make a difference. So let's start with talking about how the hell did you get into $1 million of debt in the first place? Let us know.
Girl, what were you buying, sis? I need to know. What the heck?
What were you doing?
So it's very interesting. So I'm really from Oakland. So a lot of that was my house. I had $200,000 in student loans. I have 2 master's degrees. And the rest of it was just normal debt, cars, borrowing against my 403B for a down payment on my house. Like nothing and when we were talking about excuses, Patty, I wanted to bring this up. So no, I'm not currently married, but during the time I was paying off my debt, I was married. I was in an abusive marriage and I went through a divorce in that process. So that's another layer of people saying if I can't do it because I did it in spite of all of those things while raising my kid, while working, while going from being a single mom to being in an abusive marriage to being a single mom again. But anyway, so my debt was not abnormal. I wasn't out here spending money on crazy things. It wasn't even credit card debt. Actually, it was just your normal debt. And the reason why I include my house in that number and what made it like that big is that at the end of it, when I owed about $55,000 worth of debt, I did end up selling my house, and then that paid off everything. But so it was all normal. So people were like, $1 million, that's ridiculous. Well, first of all, most people just don't even run the numbers on how much debt they actually have. Most people don't think about
that house. I want to know.
Yeah, so I look at my numbers every day, so I could tell you at a moment's glance how much debt I have. And most people have extreme amount of debt, and most people's debt is not even housing debt. It's credit card debt. It's those things that are hella dangerous to have.
So was your student loan debt? What was your debt? What did that $1 million of debt consist of?
So about 500 something thousand was my house, 200,000 was student loans, about 30 something thousand was for the down payment of my house. I had to pay to get out of my divorce. Out of my marriage. I had to pay my husband, my abusive husband, to get out of my marriage. And
you said cars
stuff. Yeah, it was a couple of cars. I paid off his car while he was in jail for abusing me. A whole bunch of, yeah. It was just like normal stuff, his braces, little stuff like that. So it wasn't anything like ridiculous.
Right. So you can add up this $1 million worth of debt or a large amount of debt by just living, right? Just taking advantage of certain things that are available to you. Down payment assistance program on a house. I'm going through a divorce. I got to get braces, and I took the 0% interest financing option because I wanted to be able to afford it and not give up my cash. I'm working less hours right now, right? It could just be very basic things. You do not have to be irresponsible to be generating $1 million worth of debt. You don't have to be irresponsible to be taking $200,000 worth of student loan debt. As a matter of fact, some people would consider taking on student loan debt, some people, not myself, as an investment in the future for future earning potential, right? Yeah. So you don't have to be irresponsible or ignorant to be generating debt. So let's remove any stigma that you might feel from the idea that you might have mounting debt. Even if your debt is consumer debt on credit cards that you had to take because you mismanaged finances, didn't have a paycheck, you had to get extra food, you bought a birthday present. It doesn't matter. Let's remove the stigma that we're embarrassed about this, and let's just sit with it, because each one of us have dealt with debt to some degree. And of course, it doesn't mean that you're irresponsible or ignorant by generating this debt. It means that you don't have the fundamental knowledge on how to manage your finances, and we want to give you that. So Next question for you, Nasima, is what made you realize that you had to turn it around? So if you were it sounds like you were able to manage a certain level of debt with good credit, home ownership. You had some basic things. You have an education. You have income coming in. What was that moment where you decided that this burden, this weight, does not need to live on your back? Well, tell us about that moment.
It wasn't even about that. I just knew that I needed to get better with money. I had my daughter. I realized that if something were to happen to me, I didn't have anything to leave to her. And first of all, I have been making six figures for a long time. So I knew how to generate money. I just thought that wealth wasn't necessarily something for me because I never saw anyone around me that I had amassed real wealth, or people that I saw had real wealth got it, not by working a traditional job. And so I didn't know that it was possible for me. But with my daughter in mind, I had a goal to figure it out. And the first step in that was to eliminate my debt. So it wasn't going into it intentionally thinking I'm gonna knock down this debt. It was like, I need to understand how to make my money work for me so that I can.
Nasima, can I jump in real fast? What you just said was so strong, because I do these career days for kids, and it's called I Am What I See. And it's so true. If we don't see people in our immediate circle that look like us, that talk like us, that have any type of wealth, that have a great relationship with finances, we believe that the struggle is just the way that life is, that God has hand selected certain people, certain cultures, certain races, however you want to put it, to the wealthier over here. Well, I was born into this, so this is the way that I have to be. So the fact that you literally had to make a decision based off of everything that you've seen, based off of everything that you believe, because your why was so much bigger than you. But I think that a lot of people don't touch on the fact that there's a lot of people that don't even consider wealth or getting out of debt, because it's just nothing, like it's just a part of life, it seems like sometimes. I love that you said that.
Yeah, a lot of people are comfortable being in a place of deprivation because that is the norm for them.
Yeah.
And it's not even that they're comfortable, it's almost internalized, because I talk about money every day and you'll see it in my comments. Like, why would you even share about that? Why would you even talk about that? Why would you disclose your income? I guess I'm just old school because I would never talk about something like that. Well, that's the first step to changing your mindset around money, is to normalize those conversations. It's to know what's possible. And so, but you can see it, like 90% of the people that will comment on my post or engage in my content just can't even imagine a world where that's possible for them, because it has not been presented to them. And so that is my goal, is to normalize these conversations, normalize people understanding what wealth looks like from just a basic level. You don't have to be an athlete, a celebrity. You don't have to come into wealth. You don't have to get wealth by shady means. It is possible from where you are, and you are deserving of it. And I had to learn that for myself. And so I share that with other people.
I want to also just kind of add, in the vein of the inspiration, which was your daughter, to learn this, right? Yeah. I had been seeing this trending on TikTok. I had kind of done some research. I wasn't anticipating talking about it right now, but I was able just to kind of pull something up. Have you guys heard about Rockefeller's investment in the education system during the industrial age? Essentially, it was, because the point that I'm making is, Nasima, I commend you for taking on that accountability and responsibility to be the one to learn, because it's not something that we learn. Our education system does not teach us how to manage money, how to manage wealth, how to create wealth.
Our education system is set up so that we can be employees in a capitalistic system. That's why we have school bills. That's why
that started in the industrial age, when Rockefeller significantly invested in the education system and clearly proclaimed that he wanted the education system to teach people how to be workers. They did not teach people how to become entrepreneurs and manage money. There was a statistic, and I'll try to find it, but essentially there's like less than 5% of schools are masonry schools, I believe, or something like that. But 90% of the wealth is created from the students that graduate from the 5% of masonry schools. Yep. So there are something to that effect. So we are not inherently taught these skills. And so no one's going to save us, right? No one is going to save us.
Exactly.
So it is your
Exactly.
job. Anyone that's listening, it's your job. It is our job. It's our responsibility to educate ourselves where that education is necessary. When you know better, you do better. So you can't
Mhm.
say for any of us, any of you are that are restreaming the show, listening to it live, that you didn't know better. Now you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Very, very, very good points to keep this conversation moving along. I'm going to go. So the question was, I just want to reiterate a couple things for some of the people that recently joined. Okay. Today we are talking about the debt crisis in the United States. 65% of households in the United States believe that we are in a recession and that's Joe Biden's fault. Also, this large percentage of people that were surveyed through The Guardian.
Wait, Patty, will you hit on your desk so we can hear it louder than you're talking?
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
She was into it, girl. What you mean?
That's right. She's like her news anchor back today.
I know.
I love it.
Of this group that were the 65% that believe that we're in a recession, they believe that it's the president's fault. They also believe that the unemployment rate is at the highest it's been in over 50 years, which is completely false. It's actually one of the lowest unemployment rates that we've had as a country. So there's a massive disconnect between what's actually happening from a data standpoint and what the average American believes. Now, that is because in those job reports, when you see constant jobs being created and you see a very low unemployment rate, over 8 million Americans are working 2 full-time jobs. Many Americans are working multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. There are lots of details in the story that are not told, but that is exactly why you're going to see the difference between the sentiment of the average consumer and the headlines that are being projected to us in the terms of numbers and facts and data. So it's really important to pay attention to that. 1 in 6, according to the Fed, 1 in 6 Americans in the poorest zip code are delinquent on their credit cards. The share of people in delinquency in this area has increased from 11% to 17%, the highest it's been in 21 years. In just 10 years, this percentage has doubled. For 90% of Americans, delinquency on credit card debt is now above the worst levels since the great financial crisis in 2008, a very important indicator. High rates on credit cards are obviously have a lot to do with this, and of course, slow wage growth. If you have been listening to me speak, watching any of my videos, reading the newsletter, or listening to my webinar, you understand that cracks in the economy are exactly what happens in a high interest rate environment. So we expected these cracks to start showing up, which is exactly why you hear criticism against the Federal Reserve for keeping rates this high for this long. That's why you see pressure for rates to get cut. Interest rates on credit card debt is directly impacted by the high interest rate environment that we're in. And of course, companies are not going to continue to offer higher paying jobs or more paying jobs when the cost to produce is as high as it is today. There is a grand scheme, a big picture to think about. So again, for those that weren't here when I said it, Nassima McElroy is the founder of Financially Intentional and has paid off over $1 million of debt while working as a nurse, raising children, and a portion of that, she was also married and in an abusive relationship, as she shared with us. This is something that's really important because we want to eliminate the stigma around having debt and also the excuses around attacking that debt and the pressure that is associated with sitting with yourself. Nassima made a very good point that the start of her turning point when she realized this had to do with being a mother and realizing that her legacy needed to be beyond having debt. She wanted to be able to pass on everything that she's earned in a capacity that would be beneficial for the future generations that she's raising. So the turning point came from wanting to give something better to her children and also realizing that this pressure is too much. We don't want to live with this sort of debt. So we want to address that. And she made a point about sitting with it and taking a look. And you said, Nassima, that you look at your numbers every single day. So what tools can you share with our listeners that can help them get started with sitting with that debt, right? I use an Excel spreadsheet. All right. I'm a Virgo. I'm insane. I need to look at the numbers. I need to understand it. I've also hired someone who's much better at it than me to manage it for me. I don't want to think about it. I don't like the pressure of looking at it. I like the benefit and the pressure of earning. I don't like managing those details. I hired someone to do it, and it started with an Excel sheet that I put together just kind of half-assed because I don't even know how to use Excel. So talk to us. Give us the tools. How do you look in the mirror every day? How do you look in the mirror of that debt? Give us the tools that you use to get started at the starting point, not maybe what you've developed now, but how did you start?
I didn't start with tools. I started with changing my circle of influence. And so I think that's what a lot of people like want to know. Like, well, what app did you use? Like, how did you do it? How did you systematize it? It wasn't that helped me. It was me changing my perspective on money. So the first thing I did was use the free tool of Instagram to only follow people that I aspired to be like. I started listening to personal finance podcasts, reading personal finance books, and following those people in the personal finance space that I wanted to be like. And those people eventually became my friends in real life and were influential to me. And so I don't want to overlook the fact that that was the biggest changing point for me, because now I saw people who I could aspire to, that looked like me, that talked like me, that were doing the things that I wanted to do. And that was my now network, right? So that was
Can
the
we talk
biggest
about,
tool. Yeah.
I think we should, that deserves a moment to really dig into, right? Because proximity is so, 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 so powerful. So
And Nipsey Hussle said, if you look at your circle and they don't inspire you to get better, you're not in a circle, you're in a cage.
You're in a
By the way, since
cage,
we're doing, rap lyrics.
He also said circles getting smaller, everybody can't go. He said that too. And what I love about that comment though, Nasima, and what I don't know that I struggle with this so much now, but there is an extreme like block when it comes to facing things that we're fearful of, right? This mountain of debt, I know it's there, but if I turn around and look at it, it makes it real. Or logging into Credit Karma, looking at that credit score, I don't even want to know what that looks like, but if I log into there and I know it's real, I really have to face it. But I think that the reality about putting yourself around people who have done this, and you're one of those people for us, right? For me, at least, Nasima, right? Where I can look at this and say, you know what, you don't have to be scared or intimidated by this. And you did that by putting yourself around people who have done what you aspire to do. Making sure that everybody picked up on that. That's really big.
But I do want to share some tools though, because I think that the tools are important, but I don't think people often like to start there, and that's not where you should start. But what were you going to say, Jade?
No, I love it, because I was going to say, so you found your why, which was outside of you. You changed your circle. And then what did you do next?
So then I started implementing tools that I started. So I'm absorbing all this knowledge, but I really feel like the best way that you can absorb knowledge is teaching it, actually doing it and teaching it back, right? So then I created my platform as I was learning. So as I was learning how to budget, how to list out all my debt, get my numbers in front of me, how to create a plan around that debt, I was sharing all of my lessons on my platform. Initially, it was just for my group of immediate girlfriends that I've had since like middle school, like just so I didn't have to repeat myself. But it held me accountable to making those money moves, right? So the things that I learned along the way was how to actually budget in advance, tell my money what to do in advance, and make sure every single one of my dollars was working for me. Like I was pimping my money. I wasn't letting my money pimp me, right? It was working for me. So
what does that look like? How do you tell your money what it's going to do? Because I need to go tell my money some stuff.
It's zero-based budgeting. It's budgeting. It's budgeting.
You're out of money, please. I'd like to know what your money means. Please tell us.
Yeah, it's straight up budgeting. And most people just are like, oh my God, budgeting is so like restrictive. But for me, it was so empowering. It was the first time that I was just like, oh my God, like I really have money to do these things. And the important things that, and it doesn't have to be strict. It's just a budget that works for you. The thing that was important to me, that as I was doing these things, I was still able to take my daughter on trips to Disneyland. And I live in Northern California, and Disneyland is in Southern California, which means a plane ride, a hotel. Disneyland tickets is not cheap. I can do that for my daughter every other month in cash while I'm hitting these goals. And so it was telling my money what to do in advance. So I knew by at least the 20th of the month, the next month, where my money was going to go. And I would go in and tweak those numbers. Some categories I would overspend a little bit. So I know that I would have to take some money from another category. But the other thing I had to learn was you always hear pay yourself first. Pay yourself first, but you don't necessarily know how that works in a practical application. For me, paying myself first, maxing out my retirement accounts at work. So maximizing my 403b, my 457, which has the same contribution limits as my 403b. As my 403b. And making sure that I invest in a Roth IRA and making sure that money is already gone. And then I work from the budget that I have left over to use in my living expenses and pay down my debt.
And I know it's different for everybody, but was there a percentage formula that you used? Does that make sense?
No, I mean, like my goal was initially I didn't. Initially, I just did like 10% of my income when I first started. I was doing 10% of my checks went straight into my retirement accounts. But there's no real rule. It's just set up something. I don't care if it's $5 a month. Like literally last night, like my coworker, I sat down with her and was just like, we about to do $50 a month and we're going to automate it. And I'm going to show you when you have more money, you click this button and then you add more money. It's that habit of actually doing it that makes the difference.
Ooh, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
And what did you use to automate that? For your friend?
My budgeting or my investing?
No, for your friend, you said even last night you sat down and you told her $50
I was just like, listen, if you have an Instagram, you could open a Fidelity account. So we went in, we opened a Fidelity account in 3 minutes, set up her automated investing, and it was done.
Yeah. You know, that is a tool when you're filling out what you call a W-4. I don't know what you do when you have when you fill out something with your employer where you give them the direct deposit instructions. It doesn't have to go into one account.
But if you're entrepreneur, you don't have that. You don't necessarily have that option. You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
Mm-hmm. I have never truly been a full entrepreneur. I've always had a whole lot of W-2 income and then had my entrepreneur money on the side. That's like my fun money. So I can't empathize with you.
Well, I think the perception of like what is important, right? So it's satisfying to someone who's aware and educated to see, you know, whatever metrics or KPIs they're looking at in their Fidelity account to be increasing versus looking at my wardrobe over there and watching that increase, right? So there's a priority in what becomes important to you. So is this a good time to talk about, or a good transition moment for talking about what that means as an entrepreneur? Because when you're an entrepreneur, right, business debt, business expenses, a whole heck of a lot different.
It's a whole different ballgame.
My question, I think, is really for Patty in this situation, because we know you get mortgage applications from people that do all kinds of things, right? Have W-2s or entrepreneurs. And a lot of times we see entrepreneurs in situations where they don't actually net enough income. Nasima, can some of these expenses of investing be business expenses technically on paper? And Patty, how do we cure making sure we make enough income to actually invest in things like real estate as an entrepreneur? Twofold question.
Well, I want to just say, like, as an entrepreneur, you have access to very powerful investment tools where you can write off a lot of your income, up to 30% of your income, and investments first. So if that's what paying yourself looks like first, you want to talk to your accountant and see if you need to open a solo 401k or what is the other one called? The Roth. Yeah. Not a Roth IRA, solo 401k or a SEP IRA. Whichever one. It just depends on what kind of organization you have, and you can write off a huge portion of your income as an investment, or you can invest a huge portion of your income. I think it is up to 30% as an entrepreneur. But the whole thing is, like, you still have to look at like your bottom line, what you can afford. And so, like, entrepreneurially, I think that the most important thing you can do is get with a CPA or a EA that knows, familiar with your business, that can help you structure your finances from the beginning appropriately. I like the what is that system where you profit first system. There's accountants that specialize in that, but there's a whole bunch of different things. But uh, uh, business accounting is a lot harder than personal finance. Personal finance, and I'm an expert in personal finance. So
that's why I recommend a tax strategist.
Yes,
because
exactly.
all CPAs are not created equal.
Exactly.
I mean,
100%.
Bringing that back to the topic, though, because we're talking about management, but directly speaking about debt management. So just making sure that the listeners understand the tools that are set up from a structural standpoint to help you build the right foundation so that when the money comes in, if it's going out in certain places and there's less money in your hand, there's a lot of people that are wealthy that have a net worth of higher than $1 million that will tell you, I'm cash poor. I might have $10,000 in my checking and savings account, but I've got I got $400,000 in my investment accounts that I'm not going to touch because there's a penalty. So there's a way of creating a forced savings mechanism, which is what Kalani was touching on with home ownership, being that, but before we do that, I just wanted to, I think I lost what I was going to say. It'll come back to me. But on the pay you first, I think the concept of that, I first learned about that by reading a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, where the idea is to pay yourself first. And whether that number is 10 or 15% or whatever you can afford. The thing is, if you've ever had a big water jug filled with change at your house and you saw how fastly that built up, you had it, your grandma had it, somebody had it, right? So you take that and you think, damn, how did that add up? Because there's a lot of unconscious spending or wasting that we do that we're not aware of. So when you automate it, it doesn't come into your net. You don't know that you have it and you're not spending it. The idea is to set up the right structure so that you understand what to do with incoming income, outgoing expenses, so that you don't over leverage your income. I wanted to share something that was important because a lot of times people want to know alternative ways. They don't maybe want to use the banking system. Something I wanted to share with you guys that's extremely important as a food for thought. In 1913, the price of gold was 67 cents per gram. Today, the price of gold is $78 a gram. That means if you measure the US dollar against gold, it's lost more than 99% of its value. So if you understand how a promissory note was created with the US dollar, the dollar used to be backed by gold. It had a serial number, and there had to be enough gold bars in existence at the bank for the amount of note instruments that they put. The dollar is a debt instrument against the gold that backs it up. And obviously we know that there's a massive disconnect between that. And if you measure against gold, the dollar has lost 99% of its value, which is why Kalani said what she said. So if you are spending money and you don't have an investment because you're afraid you can't afford it, I'll remind you of a story. I worked with a nurse who made $15,000 a month with zero 401k and was a nurse at a hospital for 14 years with zero savings. Now, her income was a gross of $14,000 and her husband made somewhere around $3,000 a month. They had close to $18,000 a month in gross income and again, no savings. They were deathly afraid of taking on home ownership. So we sat down and we walked through how they could buy a house with less than $10,000 out of pocket, how they can leverage their income to be able to take advantage of home ownership with very little down. And then we went through a line by line item, including buying gum at the store, soda at the gas station, everything that they spent money on. And they had an excess of $7,000 a month where they could not account for. I just closed on a $2.2 million deal where the client put over $1.5 million down as their down payment. They nickeled and dimed me over every single fee involved in the transaction. That's why they got $1.5 million to put down on the house. They don't give a damn about what someone thinks about them asking for a discount on a $5 charge. You understand what I'm saying?
Patty, girl, let me say what is so funny. Society has it backwards, right? When we are broke, we want to pretend like we got it, and we don't want to look like we're struggling. So we don't want to nickel and dime and make sure that we're checking every single coin because we're trying to pretend, we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. We're trying to be something that we're not, right? On the flip side of that, I love that you said that wealthy folks are going to be like, yes. Why is there an extra charge? I didn't have this other bottle of water. Okay, it's $2.95. You're a multimillionaire. Who cares? Yeah, but I want to stay a multimillionaire. That is the part that people need to get drilled into their head, because we go broke trying to look like we have something that we don't. Meanwhile, we're not paying attention to what the people that we're trying to be like are actually doing. Hello, people. Come on now. We gotta get better.
And none of those people are out here wearing designer, right? None of those people are out here actually driving around their daily drivers, in Lamborghinis and whatever, right? Those people are not out here. Exactly. Toyota.
But we do need to balance this thought. We do need to balance this portion of the conversation with the idea that it's okay to spend your money on nice things, especially if you've never had anything nice and you want to go through that experience. You're absolutely right. It took me a lot of learning on how I was doing that spending to feel good about myself, to showcase how hard I've worked, especially because I grew up in an environment where I was constantly rejected and belittled. There is a psychological factor to that, and we do understand that. So we want to balance this by saying, you're absolutely right. I have spent 21 years analyzing the finances of people from all walks of life. And I can tell you right now that someone with a 580 credit score and $500 in their checking account doesn't ask any questions about the multiple fees associated with layered financing to get into a house with no money down. When we were on Clubhouse, I would get pissed off because there would be constant rooms of saying, you could buy a house with no money down, $5,000 credit here. Listen, if you have to buy a house with absolutely no money out of your pocket, you are not in position to buy a house. Houses are expensive, and there's income, there's expenses that change with that process. I share that to say, I remember telling people over and over again, now, Jade, if I walked into 7-Eleven and I spent $2 on a bottle of water, and would you walk in behind me and spend $2.50 on that same bottle?
Right. No, I would not.
You would not. Exactly. And that's the difference between the rich mentality and the poor mentality. That's the difference between people with bad credit and good credit. It's because you are willing to walk in and pay that extra 50 cents because you don't want to deal with the pile of dirty laundry sitting in your bedroom. And I'm asking you to save the 50 cents. That's what the purpose of this segment is. And we're going to continue to go into it deeper on further conversations. And I really appreciate that you brought up with the Joneses, Jade, because I feel like being in the entertainment industry, you understand more than anybody the innate human desire to want to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. So just real quick, because I know we're about to end on time, but I do want to say this. The best thing that could have ever happened to me is that I got this reputation because my father's Jamaican of being frugal, right? And so when I gained that reputation, it took a lot of pressure off of me, right, to play this game of keeping up with the Joneses. However, I see it all the time. Y'all were talking about, going and getting nice things. Here's the thing. Nowadays, we live in a society, like if it didn't happen, and you talked about even donating to charity, Patty, that you're supposed to do it anonymously, right? Well, nowadays, we live in a society that if I don't show it, if there was no face to it, that means it didn't happen. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going broke trying to appear to be something that they're not. I pulled up this stat. Now, this is really, and you've heard this before, 78% of NFL players go broke within 2 years after leaving the game. 60% of NBA players 5 years after retirement. These are guys that make hundreds of thousands of dollars. So in the entertainment world, and then what's crazy is really just in general, every day-to-day life. I see people, I ask myself all the time, I'm like, I know how hard I work. But I be seeing some other people, I'm talking about designer head to toe, pulling up in the Maserati trucks, pulling up in the Range Rovers, pulling up in the Porsches. And here I am like, beep, beep, in my little 2014 Lexus that is paid off, that, it's still getting to the same location. But I guess my whole thing, and don't get it twisted, like I agree with you. Everybody wants nice things. But your 50-year-old self, 60-year-old self, 70-year-old self will be so happy if you just learn that delayed gratification and a little bit of discipline now. Let them clown you now. You get what I'm saying? But it's just the pressure of the world, you guys, in comparison, it is such a real thing. And it actually circles all the way back around to the beginning of this conversation, which is so interesting, of that survivor's guilt, the thing that we feel inside, because everything boils down to what we care about, what other people are saying about us, people's perception about us.
Yeah. And
if we don't tackle that, we will be either giving away all of our money, spending our money unnecessarily, staying stuck, trying to make things look unrealistic, not being able to pay off debt like Nasima. So, you said it earlier, this is not a money issue. It's a mind issue that we all need to make sure that we're tackling. I'm excited about this because I know we got a wrap, but there were a few topics that we didn't get a chance to get to today. So hopefully we'll be able to get to them next time, Patty. We got to continue this same conversation, you guys. The things, and please feel free to hit us up on Instagram. If there are things that you wish you would have known that you know now that you didn't know back then, hit us up and let us know. We definitely want to talk about that. We definitely want to talk about our relationship with money. We definitely want to talk more about debt and how to use that to our advantage. As you guys see, these women are a wealth of knowledge. I'm better today because of y'all. So thank y'all, because that's what she said, ladies, for real.
Right.
What she said.
Yeah.
On that note, let's go ahead and get ourselves out of here. I definitely, want to talk about at some point the opposite side of debt, right? How debt is used to scale, because some of the wealthiest people in the country use debt to scale their businesses and to what's the
leveraging other people's money. But I want to talk about that because that is important, but I think it's oversold to communities that aren't ready to handle that yet. And so let's talk
absolutely we need to talk about
that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
y'all gotta tune in next week.
Next week, because now you're talking my language, because it's positive that helps you, or it's leverage that helps you navigate the real estate space, and it's all mathematical, right? It's all pre-planned. The end from the beginning when we make those decisions. So I'm sure those same principles apply elsewhere. Ladies, where can everybody find you if they want to continue to tap in? Let's go, Nasima, Jade, Patty, and we'll get on out of here.
All right, so I'm everywhere at Financially Intentional, the Financially Intentional podcast. Mostly hang out on Instagram, slide in my DMs.
Hey, shout out to Elizabeth that said time flies with y'all. Make it longer. Don't make us work longer. Now, we off the clock after an hour, Elizabeth, but we appreciate you having fun. You can follow me on Instagram at I am Lady Jade. I'm not really in my DMs very much, but please go and send me a message. I'm gonna have to check them now because Nasima has put the pressure on.
What's up? I'm Patty Goodspeed. I've been a mortgage banker for 21 years. It is my desire to lower the barrier of entry to homeownership. And even with this affordability crisis, I will stay committed to that goal. You can reach me on all platforms at pattygoodspeed.com. And I'm not popping like Jade, so I do check my DMs. You can DM me. No, I'm not Jade.
Whatever. Patty, you have a webinar coming up?
Jade be posting, people be in them DMs like, oh, so what's
Did you see what she posted yesterday? In them
I thought it was Beyonce. I was like, oh my God.
Ladies, we're out of time. Patty, do you have a webinar coming up?
Our webinar is once a month at The Truth Behind the Headlines. You can see that information on the link in my bio, but we do have game night coming up where the four of us will be live and in person June 6th in Oakland, California. And I got security coming out to watch for the cars. So if you're worried about getting bit, don't worry about it. We got you. You're going to be fine. Come out, have a good time. Let's let our hair down and laugh a little bit. These topics are great, but sometimes we got to just have some fun.
Yay.
Perfect. And I'm Kaylani Blackwell. You can find me on all platforms at Kaylani B. I'm pulling up on June 6th.
You have something coming up too. You have with Women in Real Estate where people can register for learning how to run comps and stuff, right?
We did that today. I did.
Oh, that was today? I missed it.
You missed it, girl. I'm going to send you the replay because it was so good. I had to dig in my bag of tricks that I haven't had to use in a while. But we had over 120 people register in less than 48 hours. And I ended up being a 2-hour masterclass on comping that I was doing right before I got on here. So thanks for allowing me a brain break a little bit and shifting into this topic. This was a really, really good one. So I'm excited to come back and keep this conversation going for next week. Ladies, you are all the best. And we will be here same time, same place next week on That's What She Said. Bye, everybody.
Bye.